Hi, welcome to CSI Purdue. I'm Margaret Sass, and this is Chuck, and we are introducing Stacy about some really great projects that she's doing here at Purdue. So I wanted to first for you to introduce yourself and explain what you're doing at Purdue and your position and how you got to Purdue in the first place.
Very good. Well, first of all, thank you both very much for having us here today. My name is Stacy Connaughton, and I'm the Associate Head of the Brian Lamb School of Communication. I'm an Associate Professor of Communication, and over the last 2 years, I've been the Director of the Purdue Peace Project, which is a brand new College of Arts, Liberal Arts, and Brian Lamb School of Communication initiative.
Very cool. So how long have you been here at Purdue?
This is my 8th year at
Wow.
Purdue. Before that, I was a professor at Rutgers University in New Jersey and ran a student leadership development institute there.
Oh, wow. So you are now here at Purdue, and you're starting this new project. Can you go into some details regarding that project?
Sure, I'd be delighted to. It's a project that we're really excited about because it takes kind of the land grant mission of being very engaged with the communities that we're a part of and adding a research component to it. And so the Purdue Peace Project essentially has 2 goals. The first goal is to make a positive impact toward preventing political violence in the world. The second goal of the PPP, as we call it, is to contribute to new knowledge and disseminate that knowledge about peace building. So essentially, we're about working with local communities to find the best ways to prevent political violence in the world. Primarily now our focus is on West Africa, and we work in 3 countries there, but we're eager down the road to expand our work into other parts of the world, including the United States.
Very interesting.
We'll talk a little bit about those 3 countries and what students will be doing in those 3 countries when you're there.
Absolutely. So right now we have projects in Ghana, in Liberia, and in Nigeria. And those projects are diverse. So some of them center around issues of land disputes between communities. Some of them deal with issues of leadership, which is where my own research at Purdue is about. Some of them have to do with university and student relationships. But the key aspect that really connects all of these programs is that they're all situations where there's a likelihood that political violence will erupt, where armed conflict will erupt if something is not done. And so that's really the goal of this project, is to identify those parts of those potential problem spots in West Africa, and then to work with the local communities to try to find ways to effectively solve them. I think what makes it really an exciting project and really a unique project is that the Purdue University research team really is not the driving force behind what become the most effective strategies.
Really?
Instead, really the ideas come from the communities themselves, and we facilitate that. So we're about tracking and monitoring kind of what's working, what's not working, and learning from that.
So your students are conducting interviews and those sorts of things with the people in those communities?
That's correct.
Okay.
As you know, we have amazing undergraduate and graduate students here at Purdue. We have amazing ones. And so I'm really fortunate to work with a team of graduate students that go over to Ghana, Liberia, and Nigeria quite regularly. And they have an amazing opportunity to learn from community members, from local and national leaders, from industry while they're there. They do a lot of interviewing. They do some one-on-one interviewing, some focus group interviewing, as well as some observation of different kinds of meetings and events. And through all of those efforts, we're able to very systematically collect data around what sorts of tactics and strategies are working to prevent political violence. And so we're learning a great amount as we're doing that.
How far back has the research been going?
Very good. We've been in existence now for just over 2 years.
Okay.
And so we're a very, very new project, a very burgeoning kind of initiative. But we have had some successes in those 2 years. One of them most notably was that through the efforts of a local community in Barakoum, Ghana, we were able to help facilitate the resolution of a 13-and-a-half-year-long chieftaincy dispute. So the university, or the community, now has a legitimate leader that they can point to for hopefully future development sorts of efforts. That was our first project, our inaugural project, and we were absolutely delighted to be a part of it.
That is amazing. Yeah. Wow.
So what types of direct contact after you've done some research? What sort of, how do you present your recommendations? I would imagine that's quite a challenge.
Sure, it can be, Chuck, but you know, I think the beauty of this project is that we are never the ones doing the recommending. And so what we try to do is we bring together groups of key actors around a problem. They themselves come up with the strategies and the solutions. And so really, we think by doing it this way, there's a lot of buy-in, there's a lot of commitment very early on to the kinds of activities that they're going to be doing. That's of course not to say that it's an easy process. Right. You know, these are actor groups who, you know, in some cases for many years have not spoken to one another, have tremendous conflict and tension with one another. So there's a lot, I think, of negotiation that happens. But what's amazing to me is that over these 6 different projects that we had, what we found is this really neat pattern that if we can facilitate the kinds of conditions under which people can have genuine dialogue, they're willing to work together to come up with strategies that are effective.
So you're not the expert from out of town. You simply come in and collect the data and then give it to the local authorities or people you're working with that present the recommendation.
I love how you phrase that, because that is very much philosophically what we believe. As a project. We certainly have expertise that we can bring to bear on an issue, but we believe that part of our role is not necessarily to dictate or mandate what they should do, but rather work with them to come up with strategies that they believe are culturally appropriate given their set of circumstances. And so we like to think of ourselves as facilitators of that process, and then we are there, you know, as university, as social scientists, to track what's working and to hopefully help them understand why some strategies are more effective versus others.
Well, how many of your students are repeat visitors? It must be quite an education process that takes place to prepare them to go.
Oh, absolutely. But again, that's where, you know, at a place like Purdue, we are so fortunate because we're surrounded by incredibly brilliant, talented graduate students and undergraduates. And these are individuals, the folks that I've had the opportunity to work with, who are passionate about peace building, they're passionate about development issues, and they're just wonderful minds. So the way that we do it in the Purdue Peace Project, each graduate student has kind of a lead project that they work on. And so they really are in the driver's seat in terms of designing the research, in terms of working with the community. They develop very close relationships. So to answer your question, they'll go back to Ghana or Liberia or Nigeria maybe 2 or 3 times a year and continue to cultivate those relationships.
That's amazing that you give them a leadership role and they can build upon that and also bring other individuals and students involved in the process, right?
And what we find, Margaret, it's the graduate students are tremendous leaders in these projects, but so too are the local community members. So, you know, these are the community members that we work with. You know, we certainly work with industry leaders and national government leaders, but we also work with everyday market women, with youth leaders, with religious leaders who are, of course, you know, part of their local communities in very important ways, and have tremendous expertise to bring to any of the situation that they're facing. And so what's really neat for us, I think, to observe too, is to watch them exhibit leadership in a lot of different ways.
So how does a student participate in this type of program? What do they do?
Sure. Well, the first thing would be to contact us in the Bryant Lamb School and express an interest in it. Right now we have a team of graduate students, primarily in the Bryant Lamb School, who have been working on the project, but I think as we expand, we would love to get other students and faculty from around the university involved in the work that we're doing. We also have some undergraduates who've expressed interest in volunteering on the project, and especially one in particular who's very excited about working on our social media to give us more of a social media presence. So we're always looking for interested individuals to work with us.
So the best way basically is to look at the website, go to Bryant Lamb, and then start looking into PPP, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great. So we're going to be back in a minute with 2 students that participate in this program, correct?
Correct.
And thank you so much for sharing what this program's about. I'm looking forward to seeing it grow.
Good. Thank you very much, very much.
Thank you. Welcome back to CSI Purdue. We are with students that actually have participated in this project, which I'm really excited to actually hear about. So please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do here at Purdue and what you are majoring in or a graduate student of.
My name is Arunima Krishna. I'm a first-year PhD student here at the Brian Lamb School of Communication. My major area of study is public relations, and I'm a graduate research assistant with the Purdue Peace Project. And along with Jasmine here, I co-lead the Ghana projects, as Stacy was telling you about earlier.
Wow. And your background?
So my name is Jasmine Linabary, and I'm also a first-year PhD student in the Brian Lamb School of Communication. My area is related to media and technology and organizing in particular. And I am also a graduate research assistant on the Purdue Peace Project. And as she mentioned, we're both co-lead researchers on the Ghana projects.
On the Ghana project. So I'm really curious about the Ghana project, but you just came back from Ghana, right?
Right.
So can you provide some details about what you did there, how long you were there for?
Sure. We were both there over the spring break.
Okay.
So we left when the spring break started and came back the Monday after. We traveled basically to two areas in Ghana. We operate in two major areas. We operate in central Ghana and in northern Ghana. And Stacy told you a little bit about one of our projects, about the chieftaincy dispute. And the other project we have is in an area called Nandam. And those are basically land disputes that have been erupting over a long period of time. And so that's where we operate.
Very neat.
And during this trip, we were part of a workshop that was being facilitated on peace strategies with the local community members. So we had about 25 participants from the local communities who came in to come up with strategies to deal with the land dispute issues in particular, and came up with an action plan that they're now working to implement in their local communities, which is great.
And the beautiful part of this workshop is the fact that so many actors, stakeholders from within the community are involved. It's not just the people in positions of power.
Okay.
It's everyone that that has a voice, gets a voice in this process. And
Who were some of the people that were at your workshop?
so at the workshop, we had chiefs represented, we had queen mothers represented, we had women represented, non-queen mothers. We had the youth groups represented, and all of these individuals, we had media people represented, and all of these came together and brainstormed on strategies on building peace, and that was really, really interesting to see.
I'm really curious on how you find them and how you bring them together. Because my thought is if they haven't been speaking for a while or there is some conflict, it's really hard to bring people into a room. I mean, look at the United States. We still have that problem with Congress, right? So I'm curious on how you do it in another country when there's different languages and dialect, right?
Right. Well, we do work with some partners on the ground. So, for instance, in the case of Ghana, we have a West Africa program manager who's actually from and based in Ghana.
Okay.
So when we're not there, she serves as kind of that facilitator who checks in, who helps with the coordination and speaks the local languages. We also work with translators when we go. There's a fair amount that's conducted in English, but there are also a variety of local languages and dialects to overcome as well.
Right.
And in addition to that, in terms of bringing people together, in the cases that we do, it's also because they're willing. Right?
Okay.
They have to be willing to come to the table in the first place, or our project wouldn't work. Right. So these are people who are at a point where they want to engage in these discussions and this dialogue so that they can move forward.
Oh, so that's the key, really. So the person that's working there right now, that she's there all the time, right? So she kind of chooses who, or she kind of investigates who's willing to come to the table to discuss this. Because I'm sure there's probably a few that are not yet, right?
I mean, there can be, but I think for the most part, what she does is she talks to a lot of people and tries to find people who are interested in representing those various groups. So the idea is having an inclusive and representative group of individuals who come together to engage in these discussions. So it's important that it's representative of all the different stakeholders that are involved in the conflicts. And so part of her job then is to go and have those conversations. And some of our early meetings where we go on the ground before we have our larger meetings to kind of talk to people, see who should be invited, to make sure that we're not leaving a group out as well.
I'm curious, what were some of the surprises to you? Because both of you bring your own individual culture to the table and address issues of communication. So what were some of the things that surprised you about doing this type of work in Africa?
That's an interesting question.
I don't know that it was so much surprising, but it is a nice reminder of placing a value on our consistent infrastructure. Because that's definitely one of the barriers we face in the work that we're doing is having inconsistent power. So when you're trying to hold a workshop and the power goes out for hours at a time, when you're dealing with needing to send information back and you can't get access to the internet, when there are a variety of conditions that impact our work, and it just makes you appreciative of what you have here.
And being there, it just gives you an appreciation of the process itself. It's a relational process. It's a process of building trust with the people there, because we are coming to them from the West.
Right.
They have no reason to trust us.
Right.
So part of the project manager's job as well is to have those relationships, build that trust, and leading into your previous question, that's how that happens. That's how people come to the table or are willing to come to the table. And it's wonderful for us to see once we go there just how much they want to see us there. I mean, that how welcoming they are of us.
And you two went to during spring break. Who went with you? Was it just you two, or were you with a group? Or
We traveled. The two of us traveled to Ghana. We traveled to Accra, and from there, the project manager, we traveled with her.
okay, I was going to ask you how that worked. Do you, when you go back, how many times do you go back to Ghana?
We're going back a couple times a year, so there's 1 or 2 trips planned for this summer and another one for this fall.
Will you be bringing others with you for these trips? Or is it because it's your research project, it's just the two of you, or how does that
We're
work?
still in the planning process.
Okay.
So as of now, we envisage either one or both of us going.
Okay.
Since we co-lead the projects, but you never know what the future holds.
That's true. That's very, very true. And are you going to go beyond Ghana? I know that Stacy mentioned 2 other countries. Or are you just really focused in that area? Or you plan on going to the other ones and helping build that up as well?
Right, I think for us, Ghana is kind of our baby right now.
Okay,
what
okay.
we're focused on, and we're actually working on expanding some projects within Ghana for now, rather than expanding to other countries at the moment. So our focus is on getting these other projects up and running within the country and within the regions we're working specifically to.
Will the other projects be similar, identical to what you're doing now, or will they be somewhat different?
They'll be very similar. So some of the other projects we're looking at, and these are still in the very planning stages, still going through our processes of investigation, et cetera, but they'll be similar in the fact that they'll be chieftaincy or land related often. So again, they're local conflicts, kind of at a very small local level that have the potential for political violence. But they are very similar in themes that we're seeing in terms of chieftaincy disputes in particular and land issues.
What type of recommendations do you see coming out of this type of work that you do?
Our work mostly is centered around building new knowledge or contributing to knowledge. So as Stacy mentioned earlier, all of the strategies come from the local peace committees, and that's really grounded in our philosophy. Our work really is to go in and collect data and to help in and facilitate in that process and contribute to building knowledge in terms of academic knowledge as well as practitioner knowledge, and that's where really what our role would be.
So what type of knowledge, what type of data are you collecting? What would that look like?
So once we go in let's take the Baracoom project, for example, where the chieftaincy dispute was resolved through our efforts or through the efforts of the Peace Committee, the Baracoom Peace Committee that we helped facilitate back in Baracoom. What it looks like right now is that we go in every 3 months and we collect data there to see, to monitor how the process is going, how the people are feeling about the new chief, about whether there might be more likelihood for political violence or not, and that's really what we're doing at this point.
So you're interviewing individuals?
We're interviewing individuals, we're doing focus groups.
And you're trying to get a sense
Yes.
if they're content or they're happy about the way things are going.
Absolutely,
because if you
exactly.
find discontentment, you're going to have to go back to the table
Absolutely.
and reevaluate,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It sounds very qualitative, right?
It is.
Is there any quantitative aspect? Do you do any type of survey or a checklist of some sort or anything like that at all?
It's interesting because we tried.
Oh, okay. You tried.
Well, I wouldn't say we try to apply quantitative methods that are traditionally considered to be quantitative methods.
Okay.
But it does not necessarily translate that way in different contexts.
Okay.
Whereas for our projects, because the numbers we are dealing with are so small, we're dealing with 20, 30 people
Right.
at a time, it's not that easy to get quantitative data that you can really work with, as opposed to our another project that we have in Liberia, where the reach of the project is bigger, or the effect of the campaigns are larger, and there we have 300, 400 surveys that we can administer, and so there quantitative data is being gathered. But for our projects, it's mostly qualitative.
And so it's really contingent on the context and
Okay.
what's appropriate for that specific context. So what she's also referring to is particularly in our project in the north part of Ghana, there are literacy issues to deal with. And so certain methods work better than others in terms of just communicating and gathering information and talking to people about what their experiences have been like.
And from our process as well, the qualitative data has more value at this point for us, because we want to know from the people, we want their feelings at this point. So it contributes a lot for us.
And you mentioned that you involve youth. What age are you referring to? Are we talking about teenagers, or is it any age, or how's that work?
At this point, most of our work with youth involves youth groups that have formed in the areas. So we work with issue groups that are in the area, which have been developed by the youth, or that bring the youth together. Probably couldn't tell you the age.
Well, yeah, I could see that. I could see that. So you're representing the youth. I'm just curious how the youth would look at this occurring, because they are going to obviously learn from what's around them, and then they're going to grow up to be leaders as well and try to encourage peace. So I think that even little kids that are running in the area are still noticing certain things around them, right? So I was just curious about the interaction among the little ones. But you're right, they don't go up to you and say, hey, I'm like 6 years old, or I'm 8, right?
Not.
Probably
Right.
not, but I think it's interesting that you bring the youth involved, because that's a very important voice to be heard.
Definitely.
And there's also a lot of the strategies that then the local people and local committees involve the large community. So there's a lot of outreach-related efforts that reach people of all ages in terms of direct interpersonal contact, going to someone you think needs to have that conversation, to marches, to media campaigns and radio programs, et cetera. So it reaches a large portion of the population. I think a lot of the strategies that we're seeing the committees actually engage in.
So there is ways to transfer that information out into the community there.
Right. So it doesn't become contained just to this small group. It's definitely spreading throughout the community by both word of mouth, media, and actually specific strategies and efforts that they're partaking in.
Are you looking into different types of media? Because you see, that's your specialty, right?
Well, what we're focusing on is what media is most appropriate for the context. So in some contexts, radio is the most common way that people engage with media. So, and in some contexts, TV might be. In some contexts, cell phones. In Liberia in particular, there's a texting campaign going on. And they originally thought TV might be a target, but their major population that they were looking to engage with doesn't watch TV. And so radio then became a focus of that as well. So it really has to do with what's appropriate in the given context.
I see that, because even in here in the United States, it's the same thing in different sociocultural areas, even the Lafayette area. That's really important about the media. So out of curiosity, how would you, if I was a student, how would I want to participate? How would I contact you? Or how would that work?
To participate, the best way to would be to speak to one of us, or actually first speak to Stacy, and then contact one of us and talk to us really about what we do. If it sounds interesting to them, then go on and try to contact Stacy and see if they can participate. And we have a few undergraduate volunteers. We have about a team of 5 graduate students who work on the various projects. But
do you have a Facebook site?
We do.
Okay.
We do. There is a PPP or Purdue Peace Project Facebook page. So if people are interested, they can go like us and see a little bit about the work we do. In addition, we have a website that has information on the staff, the research assistants, some of our
Great.
projects, some of our recent reports. So there's a lot of information available on the website that people can check out if they're just interested in more about the project.
the best way would be just to Google Purdue Peace Project.
Okay,
and it'll
got
come
it.
up.
Yes.
Which we do all the time, right? Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's great learning about this, and I hope that we encourage a lot more students to be participating here at Purdue. So thank you for joining us with CSI Purdue, and we will see you next time.